Hey everybody, welcome to How the Sausage is Made with Chris Cosentino, where I talk with chefs, restaurateurs, athletes, philanthropists, and pretty much anybody that inspires me. We look below the surface, behind the curtain, and dig deep into how these people got to where they are today. Wins, losses, and everything in between. All right, everybody, I am really psyched. I get to talk to my friend Andy Ricker today. It's been a while. Where are you today?
I'm in Chiang Mai, Thailand.
So it's 8 o'clock here. What time is it for you?
It's just after 10 a.m. Yeah,
Tomorrow. Let's put that
tomorrow.
in.
Yeah,
It's tomorrow. It's tomorrow.
exactly.
Shit. I can't. I remember the first time I walked in to Pok Pok in Portland and we never met. I remember eating there and just having my mind blown. Like it was a game changer. You definitely put a stamp in my brain of what that food was supposed to taste like. I remember the sipping vinegars. I mean, so much. And this was like eons ago. I think I was just starting as a cook, just taking over to be the chef at Encanto. So this is like really early days and I was blown away. And I think from that point on, I mean, and then, I don't know where we met along the way, but it's been a constant back and forth for years, which I love to say. You've inspired me in so many ways. And I think I'm really excited to chat about how you got to start with Pok Pok, how that even happened, and where you are and what's going on today. So welcome and thank you for doing this.
Well, thanks, Chris, and thanks for the very kind words. Much appreciated. Indeed, as you say, we've crisscrossed over the
Oh,
last
for
couple of
sure.
decades, and it's always a pleasure when we actually come face to face.
I mean, whether it's been in New York or Portland or at events, I mean, when you had the restaurants in New York, I mean, it's always been LA, right? When you had the restaurant, I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
we've had many a great meal together. We've hung out and cooked together so many times. And you and I have talked about it a little bit, but I don't know if everybody really understands how it all started
Mm.
because, you know, your beginning in the culinary world, how did that start for you?
So I was, my life story is I was born in North Carolina. We went to California for a while, and then we ended up in Vermont when I was in like grade school. Like I think it was fifth grade or something. I arrived in rural northern Vermont, and around the time, it was time to get a summer job or a job in general because my mom was like, I'm not giving you any more fucking allowances. Like you're not getting more than $1 a week, so you better get your shit together. And
The good old East
so
Coast way.
she didn't have any money. It's like fair enough. She worked in a restaurant herself. It was like she was working at the Brewster River Yacht Club slinging pizzas. By the way, my mom worked in kitchens, in restaurant kitchens for a good portion of her life.
Wow.
you know, Not before I was born, but while I was a young teenager, she started doing it and she stuck with it for like 20 years in Philadelphia and in Portland, Oregon and stuff like that. She worked for some pretty nice places, mostly like catering and kind of like groovy places. Anyway, the choices for getting a job in that town, we were next to Smuggler's Notch ski resort.
Been
So you
there.
had a choice of either working in the lumberyard, and you couldn't get a job in the lumberyard unless you were like a big burly dude and over the age of 18. Or you could go work in like a gas station or the soft serve stand, or you went to work on the mountain. We call it the mountain. And the mountain had restaurants and it had chairlifts. So in the summer, chairlifts aren't running, so you can't get a job stuffing butts. You can get a job as a busboy or as a prep cook or whatever. And so I decided, well, I'll just go work at the mountain because it was easy. It was low hanging fruit, super easy. So I went up. My first job in the restaurant industry was as a busboy at the resort, and then I got a job as a dishwasher. I might have this reversed actually. I got a job as a dishwasher at a fondue restaurant called Chez Moustache.
What a good name.
Dude, it wasn't named for a good person. It was named after the chef who was, I won't name names, but he was like this big Swiss dude with a big fucking mustache and like the toque and everything. He'd go out and play piano in his toque
Oh my
and
God.
smoke cigarettes and throw frying pans at the cooks and scream at the waitresses and stuff. Dude ended up dying of a brain aneurysm just because he wasn't a good person, I think. And he like, can you imagine? That was my first but it was, I was my first interaction with European, like a trained European chef. Dude wasn't a hack. He was like a real chef that came from fucking Switzerland,
And what's
right?
crazy is like there was a bunch of that stuff in the Northeast. You had
Yeah.
the what was it? Up by Brenton Woods, there was another huge hotel that had all European brigade system, European pastry chefs. That was all throughout those little mountain resorts because people would come from New York, they would come from DC to go ski and spend long periods of time, and it was a big, big deal.
I remember this is the 70s, right? And that this was the mid to late 70s. And um I think also like people just came directly from Europe to ski resorts. Vale was built by the Austrians, Swiss, and Germans.
Yeah.
They were there from day one. They're the ones who the restaurateurs, the hoteliers, and in some cases, they're still there. But we'll get to that in a minute. So I got a job dishwashing at a fondue restaurant. You can imagine what a shit show that is. You're in there like you're 16 years old, you got no idea, and you're like scrubbing these baked on cheese things that I would just come out covered with water from head to toe. And part of the job of the dishwasher was that I had to help make the hollandaise and béarnaise. Like I had to stand over the fucking thing and whip it, and get yelled at by the sous chef who was getting yelled at by the chef. So, that was my,
Wow.
I with no experience whatsoever, I was in there making béarnaise and hollandaise and scrubbing cheese off of pots. And from there, I worked in a couple of other spots in that little town. I worked at like a little bar in the kitchen. I worked in a where else did I worked somewhere else in that town, but it was always doing kitchen work because I found that I didn't like interacting with the public. I didn't want to be a waiter because I didn't want to deal with the people. They intimidated me, I guess. And so I then moved to Vail, Colorado when I was, as soon as I graduated from high school, 2 years, 2 or 3 years after I started working in kitchens, I moved to Vail, Colorado. I dropped acid at my graduation, and 24 hours I was on a bus to Vail, Colorado, still high. And some kids that I knew that I'd grown up with who had already left that town had moved to Vail to go skiing. And I got there in June of like 1982, and I got a job. My friend had a job at this place called the Deli on Bridge Street that may or may not still be there, working a 8 foot long flat top making hash browns and omelets and eggs, and, chicken soup and shit like that. And so but the thing is, you got there, and if you got there in the summer, you kind of had a pick of the jobs for the winter because you were there first, right? And I could have gone into the front of the house. I could have said, no, I want to be a busboy, and it's a cleaner job, and arguably you make more money, or you make as much money, but it's cleaner. But the choice was, if you work in the front of the house, you don't get a ski pass free. But if you work in the back of the house, you work as a cook, you get a free ski pass. And that was just kind of the norm there at the time. Like you work in a kitchen, you work in a restaurant, if you're a waiter, they don't give you a ski pass. You work in the kitchen, you get a ski pass. And I wanted a ski pass because I was there
Hell
skiing.
yeah. Hell
That
yeah,
was
you
it.
wanted a ski pass.
Dude, like ski passes cost $375. That was a fortune to me back then, you know?
That's a
Now they
deal now
cost
if you
now they cost $375,000. I don't know what they cost.
last check for a Veil, which would be the Epic Pass, I think is around 1350, but an average ski day now is 285. That's a lift.
That's a 1,000% increase from when I was there,
So if you buy a
or
pass,
100%.
a
Yeah,
s if you buy a season pass and you ski like 5, 6 times, you've paid off the pass. It's worth it,
it's
right?
so crazy, so
It's
crazy.
crazy. It's totally
Yeah,
crazy to
yeah.
think it's that much difference, but
Um, I mean that's a relative bargain if you think about it.
yeah.
1,300, that's great. Um, and of course the mountain has expanded, but it was awesome. So the first year I skied like 125 days, and I was just into it, and I was like skiing off the mountain straight down Bridge Street to the back door of the the deli and I'd change out of my ski clothes and go flip burgers. My glasses would have like a half inch of grease on them every 30 minutes. I'd have to stop and go boil them. And, but it was like, it was real experience because I was like, again, it's being run by the Hermann und Otto. Hermann und Otto. Hermann was from
I
Austria
love this.
and Otto was from Germany. And these guys were running a deli, but they too were trained chefs. They knew what the fuck they were doing. And so I was surrounded by these guys who knew what they were doing. You got to make a stock, you got to make a remoulade, you got to do this, you got to do that. We're making sauces. And so my training continued despite the fact that I was only interested in skiing and maybe meeting a girl, which was impossible because there were like one female for every 7 males in that city. And I did not have enough cocaine I had no cocaine. So I had no Riz, as they say these days. I had nothing.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was brutal. And I stayed there for, I think it was close to 3 years. I stayed in Vail. And during the
Really?
time I was there, yeah, I moved from the deli on Bridge Street to working in another Swiss run place called, well, it was Austrian run, but the chef was Swiss. Freddie Zach Rzuski. I still remember these names. He was a Swiss chef. It was a place called the Lancelot Inn, which may or may not still be there. Prime rib
Yeah.
spot.
Wow.
And he would yell at us and call us shoemaker. That, oh, you fucking shoemaker. That whole thing
Shoemakers.
from the old school Germans call you a fucking shoemaker if they don't like what you're doing at the moment.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And it's interesting to look back on that because all the things that now are currently in being seriously indicted in the restaurant industry, but have passed long ago, in my opinion, were happening there. Like, rampant sexual innuendo, abuse of employees, all that shit was going on. But that, to me, that was just part of the deal. You show up in a kitchen and it's a hierarchical thing and the shit flows downstream, man. And that's, you're at the you're the sous chef, you're just taking shit from the chef. And if you're the prep cook, you're taking shit from the line cooks, and line cooks are taking shit from the sous chefs, and the dishwasher is just taking it all. And it was also trial by fire. You learned how to do things by repetition. Okay, peel this whole fucking 50-pound sack of onions, and then I need you to dice 20 pounds of carrots, and then I need you to do this and do that, and I need you to do it every single day, and I need you to do it faster. Peel the kartoffels, you shoemaker.
That's so, I can totally picture this, like being, having been to Vale and in that community and those, you still have that, like that Swiss look on a lot of the old buildings, and the hotels have that. I don't know exactly what it's called, but it's that ornate detail on the outside of the white, what looks like little towers coming down along the edging, right? And it's just, there was the Wildflower, I think was one of the places out there that I went into, was that total old school Swiss run. Like I can totally see it.
Shika's, Pepe's, Graham Shammer, like all that stuff and I think that stuff actually still is there. You'd walk around the streets at night, late at night, coming home, especially in the summer, and you'd walk by one of those Austrian run hotels and you'd hear these guys in there singing the patriotic German songs, like drinking late at night. You're just like, what? God damn. These guys, they're running the fucking place. But it's, I just ran into somebody who lived in Vale. They were like a client of mine here in Chiang Mai who I was taking a food tour, and like, yeah, they live in Vail. And they're like, I started naming names and they're like, yeah, he's still there. Yeah, that guy's still there. Yeah, he's 85 years
Wow.
old. He comes into my podiatry uh, clinic. And yeah, that dude is still running, like, he still wins mountain bike races. So it's a place where people went, and the ones who were smart bought land anywhere in that whole valley. If you bought land in
You're good.
1990, you're good. You're more than good. You're fucking awesome. So anyway, I ended up working at a northern Italian place called Vendetta's. Silly name, but again, just like really solid cooking skills. The kitchen was run by a cocaine freak named Lance, and the sous chef was this guy named Big Bird, who like lived on cigarettes and whiskey and cocaine, but they were good cooks and they instilled cooking discipline. This is where I learned to be a line cook properly. Okay, there's a story. If I'll give you a little story.
Yeah.
You remember, I mentioned that like there was one woman for every man in the whole place, and I'm an incurable heterosexual. So even at that age, I knew I was like, I'm trying to get with somebody. And I met this girl, and she was, attractive and seemingly available, a little bit fucked up, but so was I. And so she announced to me, like before we'd gotten really anywhere, she's like, I'm moving back to New Jersey. And I was like, damn. She's like, but if you want to hang out, I'll hang out with you this Saturday night. And I was like, fuck, I gotta work. And she's like, well, take it or leave it. And I was like, I can't come into work. I can't come into work tonight. I'm sick. And Vail is tiny, very, very small city. And she lived on the street where my restaurant was. And we went to a bar a block away from where my restaurant was, which was the restaurant that turned into a bar and nightclub later at night that everybody went to. And I stupidly went there with her because she wanted to go there. And I was
Oh my
desperate,
God.
and of course the second sous chef, I don't he was like, I can't remember what his title was. But he was like one of the leads, came in and saw me there. And he just like walked right up to me and said, "What the fuck are you doing, dude?" It's on the dance floor and it's like noisy. He's in my face going, "What the fuck are you doing, man? Do you know that you not being there today, I had to cover your station and my station. And we had a shitty night. I'm here to have a few drinks because I had a shitty night and you're here drinking and dancing after calling in sick. You better come into work early tomorrow morning and talk to Lance because this is fucked up." And I was just like, I didn't know what to say. I was bricking myself. I was 19. I was drinking illegally. That was you weren't allowed to drink until you were 21. But I had a fake ID that everybody believed in. And like the next day I went in and Lance and Big Bird just sat me down, and just like, dude. And these are guys who are like doing cocaine and smoking weed in the walk-in cooler next to the hotline during service, between rushes. And they're just talking to me about responsibility, like you can't do this. You're fucked. And Lance, I'm going to give you one more chance. And if you fuck this up, you're gone. And that was something that young people might not remember, is there was a time when there were more people who wanted to work than there were jobs to accommodate you.
Yep.
It's completely the opposite now. You can walk into, like, you're a young cook, you can walk in any restaurant anywhere and get a job because everybody's hiring always. At the time, there was a line of people waiting to get my job. And I was like, fuck, dude. And so I that night, that very night, it was like the Matrix. I started seeing the shapes. The tickets were coming. I had my fucking pans. I was working pasta station. I had my pans arranged. I was nuking that fucking lasagna at exactly the right time so it would bing right when the fucking fettuccine alfredo was coming up. And that was the night that I became a truly good line cook. And that was the night probably where I was like, well, there's something more to this than just a ski pass. Like I can actually have some skill. And, from there, I kind of started the next restaurant jobs that I tried to get were more kind of involved and more intense. And, from Vail, I left. I went to California for a year. I got distracted a little bit by the the surf and the fact that there were plenty of girls. LA, fucking
Yeah.
living in Venice Beach, dude. There are a lot of girls and a lot of guys and a lot of freaks. And like I was working at a pizza. I decided to take a job at a pizza place on the beach because my friends were working there and it was easy. Rolled in and did that. And then I worked at a place called Gino's east of Chicago as a kitchen manager. Learned about corporate, you know, getting crushed by the corporate restaurant gig. Um, you know, eh, and just, went through this grind of high volume, high intensity, and even Gino's east of Chicago back then, they were very, very quality conscious, It was like really, so it was drilled into me for this is, so now we're we're in 1985, 86. So I'm 10 years into my cooking career at this point, and I'm still doing these high intensity grinding jobs. I didn't get into a kitchen. Full disclosure, I didn't actually work full time in a kitchen that was doing super high quality work for another 3 or 4 years after that. And it wasn't until I arrived in Portland in 1990 when I really got introduced to this idea that food should be given respect. You know what I mean? Because me and Tony Bourdain we're a few years apart in age in the timeline, but we had a very similar background, working in turn and burn places in resort areas where there wasn't much respect given to food. The respect was given to the people who were better than you. You didn't care about the customer really. You didn't care about the food, just as long as you did your thing right and didn't get in trouble. And when I eventually ended up in Portland in 1990, at that point I had become aware. I'd done stages at Le Manoir Quatre Saisons. I'd, visited and been in some good kitchens, and it had changed in England mostly, and it had changed the way I was thinking about food. I started really caring about food. And then I got
What
a
brought you to
job,
Portland? What was it that got you to Portland?
girl. I,
Oh, good. That makes sense.
she wasn't there. She was in Seattle, but my brother was in Portland, and I had been up in Alaska on a fishing boat, being a ship's cook on a fishing boat. I'd also been a ship's cook in Australia as well earlier in my career.
Wow.
On a sailboat. And, there was a girl, and she moved to Seattle, and I drove out from Colorado. I was in Colorado again, and I had like come back to make some money. I'd been overseas for like 4 years, and I was like, I had to make some money. I moved back to Vail, didn't go skiing, just worked, met a girl. She went to Seattle. I decided to leave Vail, and I went to Portland first because Portland was where my brother was, and it was a place where I could crash out. And I just never left. I stayed there because it was an easy place to be. And I picked up a job, sort of a regular place, but there was a restaurant there called Zephyro. There was a legendary place, Zephyro, run by Chris Israel, Bruce Carey, and Monique Sue. They basically are the ones who really turned Portland into what it became later, getting food in the back door from the farmers. Did you ever hear about Zephyro as a place in Portland?
I've heard of it. I'd never, very little. I just, every time I was visiting or when we had the restaurant up there, I would hear that. And I just didn't really get much
A lot of
other
chefs in
than,
Portland got their start at Zephyro, a lot of the old school guys, including me. So, it was run by Bruce, who had worked at Zuni Cafe as a
mm,
maitre d', I think, and by Chris Israel, who had worked with what's her name, Square One,
uh,
Barbara,
yep. Yeah,
uh,
yeah, yeah.
whatever,
Joyce Goldstein.
Joyce Goldstein, yeah. And he was like her personal assistant and like, restaurant recipe development. So they opened up a place that was basically Zuni Cafe, looked like Zuni Cafe with a copper bar and all that kind of stuff. And the food was like, we were literally cooking out of Back to Square One, that book, that legendary book. So it was Mediterranean, and I wanted a job there, and he wouldn't give me one. He was like, nah, you're like one of those fucking kitchen bros that we don't want to have anything to do with, right?
Wow.
He looked at me and he's like, you're a fucking thug. Like you're one of those dudes who's got too much experience and I don't want you. He was hiring people who had like almost no experience, had like catered or something like that, but were nice.
Train them from the ground up. If
Yeah,
you have people skills, we can train you to do the work. Which there's nothing
yeah,
wrong with that. That's actually a
right.
great. It's breaking a cycle is what he was trying to do.
He was also trying to get with people who wouldn't challenge him too much.
I'm sure
To
there's
be,
that too, but
I love
but
Chris, but he was a stoner. He didn't like confrontation. So finally, I was like working at another hotel for this dude who was another one of those like old school screamer chefs. I won't name his name, but it was pretty intense. And then finally, I kept up my resume in there, and finally Chris calls me and says, "Hey man, I got a job for you if you want to come, but I need you in a week." And I was like, loyalty, 2 weeks notice, 1 month notice. I'll do it. I told this chef, I'm like, I'm out in a week. And he's like, you'll never work in this town again. And I was just like, I don't care. I'm going to where I want to work. It's the best place in town. So fuck you, you know? Uh, I worked out my last week and I went to Zephyro, and that was the beginning of when I started to understand how to respect food. He was very, Chris was like had an incredible palate. He wasn't a trained chef by any means. He was, he became the chef. He had a great palate. He understood how to make food taste delicious. And we were getting farmers walking in the back door with, tomatoes, but not until fucking August, right?
Yep.
Not till August, September. And we were getting fava beans, like a whole field full of fava beans that were only available for 2 weeks. And that was it. And we were making risotto with it. And it was like, it was the first place where I was like, wow, like they really care about things. And like the baker's making levain and like, it's this whole thing. And all the owners are there every day working. And, you know, it was amazing. It was really, and they had a bar program that was like way ahead of its time, doing really good cocktails before good cocktails were de rigueur in a restaurant. Um,
And what
and
year
that
was
was,
this? What year
this
was
was
this?
1990. I want to say 94, maybe
Wow.
94, 93. And then I worked for them for a number of years, ended up as a sous chef. And then I moved to they opened a bar called Saucebox. And around that time, I got sick of cooking. Okay, so like 1996 or 1995, realized that I'd been cooking for close to 20 years at that point, like 15 or 16 years. And I remember this very specific time when I walked out into the dining room and I saw all these people just kind of like jamming this fucking food in their face and like drinking wine. And I was just like, I got physically ill. It didn't look good to me, you know? And
Was
it
it
was,
because was it just a gluttonous situation by the guest, or was it just, did you
I'm sure
feel
it
that
was a
there
number of
was,
different things, but yeah, there was the gluttony of it. And there was the fact that I was seeing the thing that normally makes cooks feel like they have a satisfying job, which is you see a crate of shit come in the back door and you see the plate go out to the station and you see the garbage go in the garbage can. Like you see the entire process in a day.
yeah,
That's job satisfaction. When you like, if you're a cog and you go kind of go like this and it goes to the next guy and you never see a completed product, that's the soul killing shit that I think gets people out of the corporate world is that they just never see, can't touch the entire process. And in a kitchen, you touch the entire process, every single bit of it.
yeah.
Sometimes you get lucky and you get to clean the toilets after somebody pooped out what they ate, the day before. It's a very, very full circle kind of job. And for whatever reason, I just walked out there and I was just like, ugh, I can't do this anymore. So I got a job. I asked them to transfer me to the bar so I could learn to be a bartender. I learned to be a bartender. And then when Saucebox opened, I went down there as the opening bar manager. And I did bar work for a couple of years. I got out of the kitchen, did bar work for a couple of years, and then I became a house painter for 9 years. And
Wow.
so I took like close to 10 years off. I took 10 years off from the kitchen at some point, but I never lost touch with restaurants. I was painting restaurants, bartended. My friends were all worked in restaurants. I was playing in bands and I was painting houses and stuff like that, but I was still in touch with the restaurant world during that time.
So what was it then that got Pok Pok to start? Like, what was that? How did that step come from painting and, going from the bar, and then you're painting houses and you're playing music, which is just, I think, amazing that you're able to play in bands. And that does have that same gratification as you're like creating and seeing people experience, right?
Yeah.
Like I think Mark Miller said it best, nobody dances to da, just like in food, you want da 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 da,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
right, it ebbs and flows. And I think that's a really great way to explain flavors exploding and like umami and acid and salt and pungent. And that music can do the same thing. So how did you jump from that into opening Pok Pok? Because that's a big time away from being in the kitchen to then to go
Hmm.
back.
Well, first of all, I have to take exception with Mark Miller. Have you heard what the kids dance to now? He says, no, there's no melody at all. It's just like
No, I know. I know. He's coming over for dinner this week. We're actually having dinner on Monday at the house. So
play him some fucking various genres of electronic dance music. There's like
it's totally
one beat
crazy.
and totally mono.
It's
Anyway,
so
how did I do it? So look, what is every cook's fucking dream?
travel,
And
eat.
and open your own restaurant. This
Of
is, you know,
course.
this is what every cook thinks that is their goal in life is I'm going to eventually open my own place where I get to express my ideas and
And be my own boss. And
be
yeah,
my own boss because my boss doesn't know what he's doing. And I
that's
had the
it.
same, I'd look at the guys who own the restaurants I was working at. This guy's a fucking idiot. Like he doesn't know what he's doing. If I own this place, I do this, 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 and this. You know, and of course that's terribly misinformed and naive to think that way. It really
Yep.
is. But I had the same thoughts as everybody else. Like when I open my restaurant, it's going to be like this, 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 and this. And so very early on, before I became a house painter, I was working in a series of restaurants in Portland, and this dude that I knew that eventually opened a shoe shop, very successful shoe shop, approached me, and like we knew each other through I can't remember how, but he's like, do you want to open a restaurant? I was like, well, fuck yeah, I want to open a restaurant. I want to open a Asian place that sells skewers. I'd already been traveling in Thailand and stuff. I want to do this, and this is like, 1995, 96 or something like that. And we went as far as like finding a space, and I sat down and did the numbers and thought about my experience, and I was just like, no, this is crazy. I don't want to do this. You're an idiot to open a restaurant. So from that point forward, for the next almost 20 years,
That's amazing.
I was like, I was distracted by music, I was distracted by travel, I was doing this thing in Thailand, and like, you know, but at some point that thought just never left my mind. It's like I can open a restaurant. I know I can open a restaurant. So I started going to Thailand. What triggered it, of course, was going to Thailand in 1992 and coming to Chiang Mai. This is the second time I've been in Thailand and tasting the food. And then just like every year after that, going back to Thailand, cooking for 13 years before I opened Pok Pok. And that whole time, at first, it was just I didn't start studying food here to open a restaurant. I started studying it because I was curious and I was blown away and I wanted to know. And I spent a long time here.
Were you
I
taking
didn't just,
classes with locals? And
I did everything. Mostly I was working with, there were one of my oldest friends, Chris, was here. We grew up and went to grade school together or middle school. And he had married a professor at the university that he was doing a fellowship at. And they had kids and they lived in Chiang Mai, and we reconnected. I went out to visit him. His wife Lakana took me out to eat local food, and that's very well documented. If you watch the Farang sort of biography thing they did, biopic, talk about that exact thing. I tasted a dish and it blew my mind, and I wanted to know. So I was cooking with her family. I was cooking with her friends, who became my friends. A few of them became my mentors, and then I was just going out and eating all the time. And I never went to a cooking school for it. I never went to any kind of cooking school at all, ever. Right? Just that was never part of my thing. So I just did it the way I've always done stuff. Now, I think probably I'm suited to do what I do because of the way that my brain works. I have a very, very methodical brain, like approaching, what do you call it, ADHD or something? Like
oh yeah,
I'm, you know, and I learn by watching. I learn by doing. I've always learned everything by watching and doing. Like it's, I don't know how to read something and then do it. Like I've got to see it done. But when I'm seeing it done, I'm watching very, very carefully for the nuances, for the gestures, for the subtleties of what's going on. And I'm making mental notes, and I'm making physical notes, and I'm thinking about it. Like my latest thing is banh mi bread, right? And
nice.
I learned that by going to a bakery in Saigon one time and then getting obsessed with it and just, fucking going back and and then doing it. Been doing it for 5 years now, and I'm finally able to make these. It's the fucking hardest thing I've ever done. Anyway, that's the way I've always learned, right?
Well, and I want to talk about that for a second because I remember coming in and having dinner at the restaurant one night, and you were working in the kitchen, and I came in, and you were training a cook on how to make a new dish that was going on the menu. And I just and you were like, "Oh, come on in. We're gonna make something new. I want you to try it." And I watched you train that cook, and it was really pretty amazing because you had the little container set out, and I was watching you and how you showed them how much on the spoon to put in from each container. It was in an order, and you said you use numbers, and you're like, "Do it this way." In this, watched you do it, and the cook was like taking notes and absorbing and tasting as it went, and it was so cool to see how you trained that cook that then we tasted that dish, all of us together, and then you said, "Okay, I'd like you to make the same dish over again," and we tasted again together. And it was so cool because there was little tweaks that you showed them along the way, and it was the same thing because it was able to absorb it and do it with you, and it was the repetition with you the second time, and we all sat there, and it was kinda cool being the outsider standing there with you doing that because I was excited to see the new dish come to play, but it was just really, really graceful the way that you show them and very methodical, but also very comfortable for who you were training.
Right. So the thing about that is that if you talk to the top practitioners of cooking in Thailand, definitely, and many other cuisines as well, most of the top practitioners, David Thompson, Prin Ponsak, Charlie K, all these guys, these who are at the top of their game, this guy named Hanuman Aspler who teaches people, they all prescribed the idea that Thai cooking should be intuitive, that you should, and this is borne out by everybody that I learned from too. None of them were learned from recipes. They didn't even get told how to do shit. I was lucky that I was the kind of person who could watch and figure out what was going on because basically what they'd say, chop this, and you start chopping it, say not like that, like, and then you start doing it, they'd say no, not like that, and then finally you'd figure it out and they'd go, okay, keep doing that, and they wouldn't tell you if you were doing good or bad, they just say whether you were done or not. And this, a lot of my friends here learned to cook that way, sitting on the kitchen floor, given a mortar and pestle, given some shit to pound, and not given any instruction. And what that did was it allowed them to build this intuitive way of understanding. That's wrong, and you taste it, it's to this, and then you had to figure out why is it too spicy? Well, I put too many chilies in. How many chilies is the right number of chilies? But that kind of thing. And why are the chilies hotter this time and not as hot last time? So when I started cooking, that's how I was learning. But very early on, and the rest, I had to write recipes because I was hiring people that had never cooked it before. I was writing recipes. So I was saying things like small handful of mint, a pinch of this, dash of that, because that's how I cooked. I left, I was like, I was 2 years into Pok Pok and I was in the kitchen all day long every day, watching everything, and I was like, I started to lose my palate. I started like not being able to tell if what I was cooking was right or not because I had been away from Thailand for too long. And I knew I had to go back to reset my palate. And I left. I was gone for 15 days, maybe 12. And I came back and it took me 3 months to unfuck everything that went wrong when I was gone. 3 months of hard fucking work to unfuck
Holy shit.
everything that went wrong while I was gone, when I wasn't there going da 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 da. And that's when I realized I had to systemize everything or I would never be able to leave. So I started looking at the recipes and I was like, well, one of the problems that I have is that my handful is different from their handful. And so I have to fucking actually quantify this shit, right? So I started building the recipes first, using tablespoons, teaspoons, cups, all that kind of stuff. And you know, eventually much later on I converted everything to metric for the prep recipes, and the line recipes were all based on volume. And but what I knew was that I was going to be working with people who didn't know that had no idea about this kind of food. And if I was lucky enough to find a Thai person, they would have learned their way by the
Not
person who
your way.
taught
Yeah.
them, and I'd have to unfuck their whole shit to get them to cook the way I wanted to cook. So I basically started writing recipes that were very methodical. Now, what you saw was me, if what I remember, the way that I taught was that I followed the recipe myself.
Yeah.
I didn't cook intuitively and then say you follow along and make sure the recipe works. I would look at the recipe and I would do exactly what the recipe said, and ask them, just watch, watch the nuances here of what we're doing, and here's how you plate, and this is how it should taste. And that was the only way that I could get people to be consistent, and that so that I could leave to go to New York and hang out with you in Red Hook, and drink drinking vinegars with vodka in it. Like, because if I didn't, I would just have to be in the restaurant all day, every day. So,
I
yeah,
think it's really smart. I mean, you had great photos for plating. Everybody was really, and it worked. I mean, it was always. I want to talk about that amazing chicken when you would walk into Pok Pok. For a lot of people who've
mm,
never seen one of these, your giant stand-up rotisserie. That thing.
yeah.
Did you build that or did you have it shipped?
So the story with that is that there's a restaurant here in Chiang Mai, and just went last week. It's called SP Chicken. It's run by the same family for over 40 years. The patriarch of the family, Mr. Lit, who just passed away last year, was a mentor to me. And I walked in there, same story. I walked in, and it was in the early 90s. I went into that restaurant and I saw that machine with the chickens. And now that's an unusual way of cooking the chickens in Thailand. Mostly they do it on they do rotisserie chickens, but they're like kind of flat vertical, and the flavor is not the same. And they do spatchcocked and grilled. That's the other
Yeah.
way they do it. So this is a very old school way of doing it, and not many people do it that way. To this day, you can walk in SP Chicken. The first thing you see is the vertical rotisserie. Now, he told me where to buy it, and then he showed me how to modify it, because the way when you buy them, they're not good to go. You got to do a bunch of shit to them to make them work properly. So he showed me how to modify it, and so I would buy them and then I would modify them back home using local welders and stuff like that. And those things were amazing. Unfortunately, we abandoned them at some point because they would break mid shift, like the chain would pop, or something. We had like multiple of them. We'd like have to roll the old one off with the fire still in it and roll the new one into place. And eventually I was just like, I gotta make chickens passive. Like, it gotta be no moving parts. So that's when we ended up with the chicken rocket, the charcoal fired duck ovens.
Yeah.
And those work great too. But
Yeah.
yeah, for many years that was it. And it resulted in this very specific flavor. And we used game hens, right? Because they're the
Yep.
only ones that would fit on the rotisserie without hitting the firebox.
Such a good, such a cool thing, like walking in and seeing that. Like, yeah, those were, I mean, I think about all those different dishes and different times. I mean, you were doing, each place had so many unique things going on, and it was always a surprise, right? Whether it was a new herb for me, which was a lot of the times with you, you were always showing me new herbs. Like, we would
Mm.
talk herbs for hours, and it's like this bitter herb, this sour herb, this pungent herb. And I was like, what the fuck name is this? And where do you, like, you were getting stuff and having people grow things for you that I'd never seen before in the US, which was really, it blew me away because of the nuances that it gave to the food and how much it really gave it. I would say honesty is the word I would use for it. It gave it true honesty in time and place, because for most folks, they couldn't get those herbs.
Right. I mean, the thing is that for most of that stuff was like, it existed, right? But it existed in these really specific communities. Like, I
Yes.
would tap into the Hmong farmer community in Oregon and California, or I would tap into the people who are growing stuff in Hawaii or down in Florida when I was in New York or Central Valley. It was all, it was there. It just wasn't commercially available. You had to like really search it out. And in some cases it was commercially available in the Asian markets. It's just never something that people used in Western food. I remember Danny Bowen at the second iteration of Mission Chinese, when he moved down to East Broadway. He had this dish on that was cumin lamb ribs with yogurt and rice patty herb. The flavors were amazing. Rice patty herb, of course I knew rice patty herb. This is something that we use mostly in Vietnamese cooking, but in some cases in Thai cooking too. It's kind of like a spicy kind of tarragoni tasting thing. And he mixed it with cumin and yogurt and lamb. I had never tasted anything like it. And it was completely delicious. And the motherfucker took it off the menu after like a month. I could have killed him. You know? I was like, Danny, what are you doing, man? This is like one of the best things I've ever had. This is the most original thing that I've ever tasted. You making? How dare you? And he's like, ah, things change. So, but that stuff is out there. It's just a matter of people being curious, right?
And seeking it
And
out and
just
asking
go
questions.
to an Asian market and just buy everything and taste it.
Yeah.
That's that's the way. And
I think
likewise, I've had to adapt things that are readily available and used by European Western cooks because the thing that I want I can't get. So for instance, I make a soup that's from up here north called tom som sour soup. And up here we use a couple different kinds of herbs or leaves called one is tamarind leaf. Um, and another one is something called somboy. It gives the sour to the soup without having to use lime or anything like that. There's nothing like that in America, but there is sorrel. And when you throw sorrel into the soup, it does the same thing. So there were always ways of kind of like introducing flavors using what was on hand.
wow. So how long was it at Pok Pok before you started the next project? As a chef, I'm always asked the same question. What's your secret to making a restaurant quality dish at home? It's not just the ingredients, it's how you bring them to life. And it starts with the right tools. Heston's Probon professional clad cookware collection will give you control, consistency, and confidence. It's cookware that makes you want to cook more. Check it out at hestonculinary.com and use my promo code COOKWITHCHRIS for 10% off your first order.
The first project we did that wasn't Pok Pok was Whiskey Soda Lounge. And the reason I did that was because Pok Pok had gone from being the self-contained thing, with outside shack for about a year, and then we opened the dining room downstairs. Then we started expanding the dining rooms, and we were running out of, and we couldn't operate properly because we needed the kitchen for prep in the morning. So we couldn't open for lunch really. And we were running this tiny dish pit in one little part of the restaurant kitchen, and the place the dish pit became later was our prep kitchen. And it was just we needed a place to prep. And also we were getting to the point where we were having lines of people down the block, and we were having a hard time getting them back because we didn't take any reservations. And that Division Street was a cell phone dead area. Like your cell phone did not fucking work on Division Street. It was crazy. And so, we're trying to get people to come back for their reservation. They weren't getting texts. They weren't getting. And I was like, we got to find a way to hold these people, and we need to have a way of, maybe have a prep kitchen. So that's what Whiskey Soda Lounge became was that. Um, And so, yeah, Whiskey Soda Lounge became a holding pen and its own genre of food and a prep kitchen. And then from there, things just started growing and growing.
And I mean, I remember I spent many an afternoon and evening in Whiskey Soda with you and waiting to come across the street. And it was amazing to see that neighborhood and the people waiting and the excitement and just the buzz going on. And then, you know, you had Brooklyn, you had LA. What was the one that you and it was upstairs? Remember?
Towards the very end,
Yes.
okay, so
Right,
that was
but that was
Ping.
right before the pandemic.
Yeah, so that was Ping Yang Pao. That was
That
the
was
last
awesome.
restaurant that I opened. And that was the one that I was the most excited, the one that I've been the most excited about for years about doing. It was above Pok Pok Northwest.
Yep.
I built an all charcoal hearth, and we were prepping to order and we were cooking to order. And it was 24 seats. The cooks were going to serve, as well. And we had like one front of the house person, and then everybody was doing everything. Front of the house person would help prep, the back of the house would serve. And the idea was to democratize the system and also present a concept that was consistent with something that would be monetarily successful, which is to say, you gotta like, we could have a whole podcast about that.
Yeah.
How do you get ticket averages up and make people feel like they're getting good value? and how do you democratize the tipping system so that everybody gets paid fairly? And, how do you have a manageable menu where you're not, where you have just a few items and it still feel like a whole thing. And that was it. That was my salvo at it. And we opened in fucking November of 2019.
I
Which was like, you know, it was the last one we opened. It took me a year to build it out and open it or more. And it was open for December, January, February, like 3.5 months, and that was it. I
yeah,
also
I
had
remember.
this young, talented Thai woman who was going to be the CDC. I was finally in a place where I could have somebody who could literally not be a kitchen manager, but be a CDC, somebody who was going to like do their own menu. And I was like so excited for it, and it was poorly timed.
Well, you didn't time the pandemic. It's
No.
unfortunate. I mean, I remember eating there. I think it was the first few nights that I came in and we
Ugh.
sat down and we ate. And I remember you introducing us to her.
Uh-huh.
And then I came back because Fergus came to town. Remember Fergus
Right.
did? And then I came again
Yeah.
after the Fergus dinner. I came to go see you because you were still in town. And I think it's really been, I mean, I have so many great memories of all the restaurants and all the experiences and all the meals. Um, we still laugh to this day when somebody came in with an allergy in your special menu that was in its own encased it said
Yeah. Yeah.
allergy. Still to this day, I think that's the best thing ever.
Yeah.
But it was smart because it was safe and everybody knew, and like all those pieces created new things. You started the sipping vinegars, right? You were doing some, and which became, to me, as a person who now doesn't drink, that was one of the starters pieces for me to go from having it, yes, with gin or with vodka, to then switching over to having it with tonic and knowing that I'm getting something that's flavorful. That then became my mignonette for the oysters at the
Ah,
restaurant.
yes. I remember that. That's right.
I
What were you
used
using? Like
the celery,
celery. That's right. Yeah.
which was the best mignonette hands down ever.
Yeah.
Hands down.
Yeah. That product never really got used enough in the culinary space, though Salt and Straw used it in some of their ice creams, which was
Yes.
cool. I thought was cool. Yeah, look, that whole product came from me going to the Asian markets in the run up to opening Pok Pok and finding these things that were like drinking vinegar or health vinegar from Taiwan or from China or from Korea, and just like taking them home. Some of them were terrible, some of them were really delicious, but they had this ratio. It's like mix 4-to-1 with soda water, and I started tasting it, and I was like, this is like perfect for Asian food. It's tart, it's sweet, it's got a nice fruit flavor and herb flavor or whatever, and it's very sophisticated and grown up feeling. And as it turned out, it did. Your experience with it as somebody who was becoming sober, a lot of folks in that who were exploring that kind of thing ended up using Soam as kind of like a bridge or like an alternative. To this day, actually, Chris Yenbomrung just pinged me the other day saying, "Hey man, I found like 3 bottles of this stuff in my cupboard, and I'm not drinking right now, so I've been drinking Soam." And I was like, "Yeah, that's cool." Yeah,
I love it. I miss it. I very much so miss it. And also then you started Ton, right? You were
yeah.
producing beautiful charcoal. I mean, you really were pushing this envelope with all of these delicious and useful things within the boundaries of the cuisine that you were cooking in. And I think it really opened a lot of eyes, to
Hmm.
what can be done. I mean, the charcoal, how did that come to be? And what was the inspiration for being able to do that?
Well, first of all, everything that we've talked about so far was from necessity. I basically the drinking vinegars, we started making them because the supply for the stuff you could buy in the store was very sporadic and frustrating, and I was lucky enough to have somebody on my staff who was a former was formerly in a wine industry, and he understood some stuff, and so we kickstarted that. And then with the charcoal, it was the same story. We were using a lot of charcoal in our restaurants, right? And initially I was using mesquite because that was what was available, but there was like a year or two where the mesquite was coming through, and it was wet. and the shit was exploding, and
Yeah.
there was like you waste like 20% of the bag would just be crumbs or dust. And then mesquite, turns out that the ancient mesquite forests were being plundered for charcoal, and that was not a sustainable thing. So we started looking for sustainable charcoal and went through like coconut shell, and we eventually found this stuff, right? The stuff that we started marketing, and we were just bringing it in by the container load for our own use. And one of my employees, this guy who was like the more or less the CFO, was like, "Hey, why don't we start a business?" And I was like, "Yeah, okay, that sounds good." And so he kind of was the one who was kind of pushing us towards that way. And so none of this was like out of my forehead completely formed. It was like a combination of necessity and convenience, and having people around me who kind of like, would push in a certain way or had certain skills that you know pushed me to do stuff like that.
I think that that's most of the time. My thought is that's usually when the best ideas and the best things happen is out of sheer necessity. And the same thing with cooking, right? When you have limited ingredients, sometimes it's the best dish in the world because you're learning to cook with things. When you're hyper focused, less is more, and you can really hone in. And it's out of necessity.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cucina povera, the cuisine of the poor, is out of necessity,
Absolutely.
right?
100%. Yeah, I mean, a lot of the things that we think of as classic, you know, dishes from all over the world came from that, right?
Yeah.
That's, you know,
It creates ingenuity, creates, you to think on your feet and really push that envelope. So
exactly. Yeah.
what is pandemic happens and all of our worlds change, right? As you know, we've talked about it before. Portland was the first one to go for me and my restaurant world. And it's just started to get really weird for all of us. And a lot of us lost a lot of restaurants and a lot of business. What was your next step? Like after the pandemic, you're now living, you're now living in Chiang Mai and you do travel back and forth. But I know you've been doing consulting and doing different things, but what changed for you now? What is your new?
Well, I think that first of all, just a little preamble here. A lot of people think that COVID is what destroyed the restaurant business, as we were talking about earlier before we started recording about the golden age of restaurants, which, in
Yeah.
America, which was probably 20 years from the mid 90s to the mid 2000s, or not even that. It's like the 10 years from the mid 90s to the mid 2000s. That was the golden
Yep.
age. And then, it got, towards the 2010s. Maybe it was a little longer. Maybe it was more like 15 or 20 years total. I don't know. Yeah, maybe 20 years from like 95 to 2015 or something. But a lot of the things that we're facing now in the restaurant, or you guys are, or the other guys are facing in the restaurant industry now, not us, we're actually already a huge problem before. For the, basically for the last 3 or 4 years that we were in business, everywhere I went, people were talking about the same shit they're talking about now: lack of talent, lack of bodies, rising costs, refusal for the public to accept higher prices, tipping inequality. All that shit was already going. COVID just tipped it over into like this new thing. And so for me, COVID basically made me examine everything about my life, because it was a stark moment. It was so stark. It was the starkest moment that I am likely to encounter in my lifetime, right? Which was just like this: the world has stopped, and I had to, you know, countenance who I was, not just how I felt or what I was doing. I had to think about who I was, because my identity for the last 15 was this fucking restaurant, right?
Yeah.
And
And
my,
I want to talk about that for 1 second because
yeah,
that is a hard thing. One of the things that people say, and I've said this a lot, there's only three careers where you're addressed by your title: doctor, your honor, chef, right?
uh-huh. Yeah,
And
I guess so. Yeah, yeah.
so think about that. When still people, they'll see you like, what's up, chef? What's up, chef? Always,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
It's your identity. It's who you are. And I still, I struggled with that when the pandemic happened and all the restaurants were gone. Like I kind of lost my mind. I didn't know who I was anymore, just like you had talked about. Like you
Hmm.
said, Pok Pok. the identity, it became our worlds were our identity, which was the restaurant. That's a
Yeah,
hard thing.
exactly.
That's a hard thing to choke down when it vanishes.
To a certain extent, but for me, it wasn't exactly that way. For me, I had gone through, complete and utter life changes multiple times. I had like not reinvented, but slid into another life like multiple times before this happened. And though I had, made a lot of noise about this being what I'm going to do forever, I wasn't counting on COVID, right? And a few things happened during that time. Number one, and probably the thing that just like hit me the hardest, like emotionally, was Floyd Cardo's dying.
Yeah.
In
Yeah.
the very early days of COVID, dude who was my age, lived a similar lifestyle, was back and forth from Asia, had restaurants in New York, all this kind of shit. Died in a similar health, he wasn't obese, but he wasn't fit. And that's kind of suits me. And I was just like, fuck, man, Floyd died. That's fucking crazy. And I'm 59 and I feel myself, I have this massive amount of stress always. That's part like being a restaurateur, chef, whatever you want to call it. You're under stress constantly because your job isn't to come up with a cool new dish. Your job is to solve fucking problems. And the problems are not typically, you know, how much more basil should I put in this dish? Your problems are shit, this manager that I hired that I told them they were going to be able to sort of like take on revamping our hospitality thing is working as a fucking floor manager right now because the floor manager quit with no notice and they've been in this for about a year. They haven't been able to get out of this cycle. And and you're just like you just feel this like pressure of responsibility for other people's well-being, your well-being, your family's well-being. And the thing that you figure out is that the problems that you have in this business as an owner, as a chef, never change. They're the same. Year in and year out, they're the same. It's different people, it's different situations, but the problems never go away. You don't ever solve a problem 100% in a restaurant, ever. That's just the way it is. And so I was just like, fuck, dude, am I going to stay on this? Because I contemplated the same thing that everybody else is. How are we going to survive this? How am I going to come back? What are we going to do to adapt to the new reality? And I was just like, wait a minute, I if I do this, I'm basically recommitting myself to this fucking grind for however many years going forward. I'm going to go deeper in debt. I'm going to be fully engaged again in being in the restaurant. And I was just like, I can't, no, I'm six. I don't want to like wake up, short of breath at the age of 67 and have to get up and go and fix the fucking dishwasher, or whatever. So for me, it was when I made the decision to close everything down, it was a relief. And my plan to come and move to Thailand was always there. It was there from the very beginning. I could show you a notebook that shows, like eventually I'm going to move to Thailand permanently after this restaurant is XXX. And all it did was move that shit forward for me. So
It adjusted your
I'm
timelines.
it just adjusted my timelines and it's a it still is a huge relief. And when, like you, probably you're walking down the street, you see a space and you're like, huh, I could make that into a restaurant. I know exactly what I would do. I
Yeah.
have a concept in my head right now that I know I could do it. I want to do it, but I know I'm not going to do it because don't want to go through that shit again. Right. So since I've moved here, it took me a good solid 2 years to undo the business and undo, the brain damage I was giving myself every day to get my brain not to wake up in the morning hurtling towards the front of my skull. It really took a long time. I don't know about what your experience was like with that, but like when you close a restaurant, or you close several restaurants, it isn't, you just don't like drop your tools and walk away. There's a bunch of shit you got to do to unwind. And your brain is still getting up in the morning and it's going like this, like, and your body goes with
Yeah.
you. And if you stop and your brain is still hurtling forward, it's not a comfortable place. So it's taken a while. It's been 5 years, and now I'm doing other things, and I'm not I don't. In a lot of ways, it's weird. I look back on the restaurant, and I know I did that, but I know I can't do that again. It's kind of like, and please, I'm not comparing myself to Bob Dylan in any fucking way, but but there was this really great interview that he did with like Bill Bradley for 60 Minutes, where he says, "Do you ever think about those songs he used to write back in the 60s?" And and he's like, and Bob Dylan's like, "Yeah, yeah, there was a certain kind of magic, and it's not the Siegfried and Roy kind of magic. It's something, and he said, but and I could do it then. I can't do it now. I can do other things, but I can't do that." And it's like on a like a very, very diminished scale. I feel like there was a certain amount of magic that happened, and I was in a certain mode. I had like this certain experience, and I had a certain sort of drive and a vision and this sort of like hunger and kind of like a creative kind of like surge, and that's not there anymore.
Fair.
Yeah.
I think that makes it's I get it. So I have a question about what is your thought on social media versus real life in the restaurant world? Because they're, as you know, it's being portrayed very differently than it is.
I think that there's social media is all about instant gratification, right? It's all about like seeing the shiny thing and achieving this shiny thing, and like there's, chefs showing a dish coming into fruition in, a 2-minute clip. They go from raw to cooked and out the window, and it's like that's not real. It's like the process of doing stuff is, repetition, repetition, experience, 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 and then figuring out how to do it, refining it, refining it, refining it until finally you can make a 2-minute clip about it, right? It's
Yeah.
the reality of working in a restaurant is that it's repetitive work. The gratification isn't instant, is accumulative, right? You can see it happening, and there's a certain like this idea that a chef is a creative person that's constantly practicing creativity in meaning like they're creating a new dish every second. It's you don't have time in your brain to be doing that all the time because you have to worry about getting this fucking dish out the same 50 times a night for the next 3 months or 6 months or forever, right? That's
Yep.
mostly what your creativity comes is like, how do I maintain this shit, right? And so for me, social media was a necessary thing. You have to do it in this world to remain relevant if you have a brand that you're trying to keep alive, and it's your livelihood. But I remember the days when a review, a good review in the New York Times or a good review in a local rag made your business for years,
Yeah.
right? And
Big
there
difference.
huge difference. And you now, everybody's attention span is super short. So I don't know if I've answered the question or
No, I
not,
think
but
that's a really great point. And that's I think that's the it used to be the cigarette break, now it's the Instagram break or the TikTok break or whatever the heck you want to call it now. And I think those those times where the New York Times or the Chronicle review or being reviewed, by the Karen in Portland, right? So like those reviews were powerful and they were weighted and they were heavy and they stuck with you and people lived and breathed by those. And now the social media, I kind of think like social media has created restaurants. Like people look at Tinder. Yep, 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 yep. Nope. Been there, been there, been there, been there, been there. And it's just created
yeah.
this situation where restaurants aren't your local spot. You don't go regularly anymore because you want to see what's hip, hot, and new instead of what's consistent and delicious.
I think that's true to a certain extent. Though I do think that people are creatures of habit, and that we, even the most intrepid of the TikTokers probably goes at, when they're not TikToking, they probably fucking eat the same breakfast,
Yeah, that's true.
wear the same, they have their favorite shirt or their favorite underwear, and like they, When they go to Starbucks, they order the fucking double venti mint hummingbird asshole latte or whatever. You know, it's like,
I've not had one of those. That's
yeah,
new.
me either, but you know, I'm sure they exist.
What has been your worst mistake?
My worst mistake, probably my worst mistake in life was not doing what you did, which is to stay fit throughout your career. I mean, maybe there were times when you were, you know, snorting too much heroin or, you know, smoking too many cigars. I don't know. I have no idea what your vices were, but I'm sure you had your
My vice was
vices,
booze. My
drinking,
vice was
booze,
booze.
yeah, drinking. But you've remained, how old are you? Like 70? Like you look great. You're like
53.
53, and you've you know, bicycling and whatever else is, you stayed fit all the way through this, and I kind of lost that because I was running all those all that Pok shit that was going on in 3 different cities and 8 different restaurants. I didn't have a partner. I didn't have a financial backer. I was solo. That was me. And I was also the chef, and I was also the designer and the fucking builder, and I just felt like I didn't have time in my life to do yoga and Pilates and exercise. And that was a huge mistake to not set, because that's a habit. When I was younger, 30, I was an athlete. I was a rock climber, I was a mountain climber, I was a bicyclist, I was all this shit. And I let that go after an injury. But I let it go. And I'm trying to claw my way back at the age of 61, some semblance of you know, good physical fitness, and it's hard as hell to make progress when you get this old. And you know, just getting the motivation to get up in the morning and go take a walk, to go to the gym, to, you know, prioritize your own health over your career was is incredibly difficult, and I made a mistake of not doing that. I prioritized my career over my own health.
So, what has been your best meal? Do you have a best meal?
Do I have a best meal? I mean, look, I have notable meals throughout my life that were life changing in one way or another, that kind of that are memorable. I don't know that it means that the food was the best that I've ever tasted, but to me, a meal is more than the food. The meal has to do with the company you're in, the place you're in your
In your head,
mind,
yeah.
and a bunch of other things. And so, you know, there's a few, like, I think some really formative ones that, as I look back on my life, I think the first one that I had when I was a kid was when my mom made, and you're going to know this because you're Italian, the Italian wedding soup, stracciatella,
Oh,
right?
yeah. Yeah. Well, just
That was
yeah, the
something,
Italian wedding, meatballs and
meatballs and spinach and egg drop and like
yeah.
Parmesan and stuff like that. She learned that from her Nonna. My mom is half Quaker and half off the boat Italian, and that was the only thing she learned from her grandmother, as far as I could tell. But I still remember that, the flavor of that. I'm 62. I had to have had it when I was like 8, and I still remember that. I still remember the flavor. So that's one. Another major meal in the whole kind of lifetime of meals that I've had a lot is probably the one that I tell the story about how what got me into Northern Thai food, which was a local mushroom here called het top that I was served when I came to visit my friends here in 1992. It's basically the local truffle. It's not a truffle. Looks like a puffball, but it's only available for like 3 or 4 weeks of the year, right after the hot season, right when it starts raining, starts coming up after the forests burn as well. And when they're picked fresh and they're, you know how puffballs are white in the center, and if you wait too long they turn black. Same
Yeah.
thing with these. If you get the ones that are firm all the way through, this incredible odor aroma, and then they make a local soup out of it that involves pork ribs, tamarind leaves, these mushrooms that have the very earthy, slightly bitter flavor to them, chilies, and some local aromatics. And the flavor was something I'd never experienced before. It was a combination of like bitter, sour, earthy, me, in just this completely new way to me. I just never had a flavor like that before, and that's what kicked me off on this whole journey, was that one dish. So that's one. Um, and then another was on another trip in, I think it was right in 2003 or 2004. I ate at St. John Bread and Wine for the first time. Still to this day, one of my favorite restaurants of all time, St. John Bread and
For
Wine. Just
sure.
brilliant, brilliant place.
Yeah.
Just super duper simple. It was, tell you what it was. Fergus was doing what the people in Pacific Northwest thought they were doing right away. You know, it was like a dandelion salad with snail. And, you know, and you're just like, this is the prototypical Pacific Northwest food. And he was doing it in the 90s, you know.
Yeah.
Um, and I just remember that meal as being just such a special thing. And then finally, the first time I went to Elcano and had the turbo, you know, just, you know, those probably in my mind right now. If you ask me tomorrow, I'll give you another 3.
I love that. What won't you eat?
I won't eat airplane food in America. I know one of the weirdest things that, like, you know how you get those questions that interviewers for magazines are like trying to listicle. It's like, what's the weirdest thing you've ever eaten? And my answer was like, these things they called gnocchi on a Delta flight. It was the fucking weirdest thing I've ever seen in my life. It was like these lumps of gooey dough in water with coagulated cheese. Like how it doesn't get any weirder than that, man.
Yeah, sounds like airplane food.
Yeah. Also natto. I don't like natto.
Me too. I do not do
It's fucked
natto.
up, but I know a lot of people that I respect that love it, but I just can't do it. The crunch and the slime together are just like, can't do it.
It's too bizarre. I mean, that's one of the things. There's 3 things I can't do. Natto, stinky tofu after like 14, 15 days because it burns, right? It burns your nose,
Yeah,
it
yeah.
burns your mouth. You know
Ammonia.
that,
Yeah.
it's so strong. And then I can't do balut.
Yeah, balut, fuck that, man. I've done it. It's kind of oily and crunchy. For me, it's texture stuff that fucks me up
I mean, the
mostly, you
feathers.
know?
Somebody gave me one that had fucking feathers. I was like, fuck is this shit? It's raw.
But then again, I never like kind of go, that's not valid. That's disgusting. I'll just say I can't do it myself. And because I know
Yeah.
a lot of people that love this stuff, and it's a part of the diet, you know, and there's stuff that I'll eat here, or I used to eat that people are just freaked out about, like lu, raw blood soup. Uh, you know, and understandably, a lot of people are just like, I know. But the fact of the matter is that it's deeply folkloric and it's part of that. Remember the whole, you know, Brad and the whole blood sausage thing back in the early 2000s? There was that thing he did where like everybody, I think you were in it too, is like, what do you use to cook? You cook with blood. What do you do? And it's like, you're using the whole animal. You're using everything that's been
Yeah.
given to you. And it's an incredible source of protein and it's folkloric, but it's raw blood, dude. You know,
Was there
it's
is
pretty
there
gnarly.
acid in there? Is there like a lot of acids in there to keep it from coagulating and off?
Lemongrass, they scrunch lemongrass in it. They also add bile,
Oh
raw
yeah,
bile
bile's
from
big.
the stomach. So it's bitter, but it's not sour. It's bitter and umami.
Huh.
So yeah,
That's yeah, and I think that's really an important part for people to understand. It's like just because those things we don't want to eat them doesn't mean one, we haven't tried them. I have respect for everything, just like you do, but it's just we're not a child and we don't just go yucky or gross. It's like texturally,
right.
like you said, I don't like the crunch and the slime. I didn't like the feathers, right?
Uh-huh.
And the bone crunch. Yes, I've eaten ortolan, which is a totally different experience with bone, but there's no feathers, right? So
Right.
like stinky tofu is great, but that past that certain point of fermentation, it's rough. Like
Yeah.
it burns your nose, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
think I think understanding that and being able to articulate it is really important of why it doesn't work for you. Whereas a lot of people just turn their nose and say gross, icky, or make a joke out of it. It's not that it's a joke. It's just those are certain components of things that we don't enjoy. And that's
Durian.
reasonable.
I mean, yeah, you know, durian I love. I have a durian tattooed on my arm. I love the taste and the smell of durian. I think it's one of the most incredible fruits on the planet Earth. And a lot of people agree with me. All of China, all of
Yeah.
Southeast Asia. But, you know, Andrew Zimmern, who made a career of like being able to put anything in his mouth, basically, you know, mice nuts to fucking hummingbird assholes. The guy could put it in his mouth and eat it. And durian, he can't. I got him to taste a durian dessert one time, and he was just like, ugh, spit it back out. It just didn't like it, Fair
I
enough. You don't like what you don't like.
I had a durian crepe cake the other day down the street from my house. It was delicious. It's
The
very,
bubble
and I
crepe?
think no, it wasn't bubble crepe. It was a
Oh, like
traditional milfweed layered crepe
yeah,
cake. It was gorgeous, and I
yeah.
think durian has a very distinct aroma, and the flavor is great. And I think for some people that aroma is too strong. That's it.
They're catching the notes. Their nose are catching the notes that are familiar to them, I think is probably mostly what's
Yes.
happening. They're catching that sort of underlying sort of semi-oniony smell, and they're missing the beautiful top notes that everybody else smells because their brain is going straight to the like, oh, I smell onions and something else like in it. But they're missing these beautiful fragrances that it's such complex perfume. And it was hard for me too at the beginning to get past that stuff, but I did. Yeah. I
It's
love it.
it's I struggled with it at first, and the more I've been around it, I think also having it fresh is better than having
Dude,
it frozen. Big difference.
it's so much better. So much
Such a
better.
different flavor profile, such a different aroma. Yeah, and I mean, a lot
Also
of people.
varieties.
Ah,
Also varieties. There's dozens of varieties, and the one that everybody gets to eat is called Montong, which is like the red delicious of the durian world. That's what everybody eats because that's the one
okay.
that's grows the easiest, the one that they can export and freeze the easiest. But there's like tons of other varieties that range in texture and flavor from, super soft and super pungent to like sort of firm, not quite crispy, but bright. It runs the gamut. So
Oh,
anyway,
that
come
sounds
over
cool.
and we'll go on a durian season. We'll go durian tasting.
I love that. If you could sit and have dinner with anyone, with us or gone, who would that be?
Well, I mean, I'm very fortunate to have been able to sit down and have dinner with Tony Bourdain. So that's a sort of a list thing that I think a lot of people in our profession and elsewhere, so I feel fortunate that I have ticked a bucket list of somebody who's, basically legendary. Willie Nelson,
I
I
love
just
that.
like the greatest living American in Barack Obama. I mean, basically, I would love to I don't know if the guy even eats anything. He looks like he smokes a lot of pot and doesn't eat much, but I'd love to sit down at a dinner table with him. I think it'd be fascinating.
I'm sure he's got some great stories. I mean, look,
Oh
he
yeah.
Farm Aid, right? He has to eat. He did Farm Aid for how many years?
Yeah.
Biggest culinary flop. What has
Of
been the
my career,
dish? Yeah, the one that just burr, burr.
the dish. The dish. Okay. I mean, on a professional level, like putting dishes on the menu at the restaurants, the things that I was just, I really love this thing and I think it's like it's such an iconic dish for a certain there's been a few of those, as you can imagine, with what I do. I think probably the one that always disappointed me the most was this thing called jaw pakad, which is basically it's a northern Thai comfort food. Again, we have pork ribs, we have tamarind, we have tuanao, which is a fermented soybean. It's basically natto that's been dried uh, and then
Really?
toasted and pounded into a powder. In that form, I like it. And then pakad, which is yuchoy,
Okay.
and it's stewed together in this very mild, this very sort of like sour, umami-rich, like quote curry unquote. But it looks for all the world like collard greens. Looks like Southern soul food, and it's beige, right? The greens get it's not the soup is funky and sour, and it's not pretty to look at. But I love this dish. This is a dish that is iconic in the North. It is something you can find in restaurants, yes, but it's more of a home cooked dish. And I tried to put that on the menu multiple times at Pok Pok. And we'd sell like 3 a night or something like that. I couldn't get the waiters behind it. The people who tried it, who liked it, really liked it, but it was just really hard to get the waiters to sell this thing because they knew when it hit the table, people would be looking at this beige, stewed vegetable thing. So that was a bummer for me, to be honest with you. And there's been more. Cooking with bamboo shoot, right? In America, just people, it's another one of those aroma things. Like bamboo shoot has a really particular smell, and the only way it seems like Americans will eat it is the Japanese dried bamboo that they put into ramen, where they cook it so much that it's barely got any more of the bamboo flavor left. It's more of a textural thing. But bamboo shoot's a very, very tough sell, super tough sell.
You
And
know, it's
I've tried. Yeah.
I have been, of course, people don't realize there's a bamboo shoot season, right? You have,
Yeah.
that's one, people don't realize that. They just think it's something. Most people have only seen bamboo shoots in cans,
Yeah.
right? They, to me, are similar to artichokes.
Similar texturally speaking. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And I'm
And they do have that kind of like, I don't know how to describe that artichoke kind of that I, I've never
acridity.
been able to describe that flavor. You know what I mean? It's like it's at the back of your throat. It's like it's neither sweet nor sour nor salty. It's just kind of
It's tannic.
do you
I
have a
like to
way?
say I say they're kind of tannic because they interfere
A
with
little bit, yeah.
wines, right? It's
Uh-huh.
acrid. It has that reaction in the back of your palate, like you would think you were getting that umami sensation here, but it's just a little bit further back, and it's like
Yeah.
it's it's scratchy. I would say it's
Yeah.
scratchy on the back. I like it. We've been testing them out in Maui. I cook them barragoul style.
That's interesting.
And they come out really great. It's just it's tough because if you don't get them right at the right time, some sections are hard, some sections are soft. Takes a lot to cook them.
Yeah. No, in the north here, I mean, all over Thailand, people eat it because it's fucking free food. You know, bamboo is a grass. It grows,
Yeah.
crazy. And the right time of the season, my my mother and father-in-law collect it and they can it. They put them into a big, huge oil tin, yeah, sort of 5-gallon oil tin, and then pour boiling water into it and seal it up. It's kind of like canning. And then, they pull them out as they need them. They add a little bit of salt too, I think, because they don't ferment. They just stay. And
Wow.
those are delicious too, right? The dish that I was making at the Whiskey Soda Lounge is called soup no mai. And soup no mai is a iconic Isan dish that involves bamboo shoot, yanang leaf, which is a type of vine, I believe, that you blend into a juice, and rice powder, and it's absolutely delicious, right? But again, it's that you're using the preserved bamboo shoot in that, not the fresh young bamboo
Yeah.
shoot. And just that smell and that taste, I think it's fucking awesome. But man, that probably sold even less than the jaw pakad.
What's funny is that these aren't flops. These are
No,
traditional dishes that people don't their palates haven't acquired those flavors properly or aren't
right.
accustomed to those flavors. So these aren't really flops. It's not like that mackerel with white chocolate and
Yeah, I
weird
mean, the thing is,
combos.
Chris, as you know, I've made a career out of not cooking food that I made up.
No,
Luckily for me.
that to me, I think is really what's really unique about what we're talking about is that a culinary flop on the menu is just palates that haven't been educated to those flavor profiles that are very traditional in those regions that you're cooking from. So
Yeah.
it's interesting when you start to talk to different folks, as I have with this podcast for a long time, everybody's culinary flop is they're all very different, right? Whether it's, you know, screwing up overpicking sweetbreads to end up having BBs, like, I mean, there's all sorts of things. But this, in my mind, is just ultimately boils down to not the traditional culinary flop of poorly putting things together. This is people not understanding the flavor profiles of the country, of those certain regions.
Yeah. It was a business flop. I don't think that it was a fail. They were obviously not failures as a dish. And the thing is that I always had something like that on the menu at Pok Pok. I always had something on the menu that I felt was important, that I thought was delicious, that I felt fit with the rest of the things on the menu, that would typically not sell anywhere near the amount that the other stuff would sell, but I would insist on having it on the menu because the wings allowed me to do that, right?
Yeah.
Uh, for every 1,000 orders of wings that I sold, I got to sell one jaw pakad, or maybe 2,000. Who knows?
Do you have a favorite cookbook
I mean, over the years, I don't think I have one that I can say this is my favorite. I can give you a few.
or one that influenced you the most when you were coming in to your
Well,
career?
if you have to say the one that I used the most at a certain time where it really kind of informed what I was doing, I would have to say that would have to be probably the Chez Panisse books that I started cooking out of at a relatively young age. And the reason was that the way that Alice wrote the recipes were very user friendly. Like everything in those books work.
Yeah.
And as you know, cookbooks, doesn't, just because you have a beautiful cookbook doesn't mean the recipes actually work or
Yeah.
are explained in such a way that you can make them work easily. And that I was, I'll tell you a brief story. I was a sole charge chef at a little cafe in King's Cross in Sydney back in the 80s. And we had to do the whole menu. It was amazing. It was like you got to do the entire menu. It was handwritten menu. It was me and one other guy. He was 3 days a week. I was 3 days a week or something like that, or 4 days a week. And we got to do our own menu, and we had to have desserts. I was a typical line cook. I'd never had to make desserts. I had no idea. And I was like, fuck, I got to figure this shit out, And I got a hold of the Chez Panisse dessert book, and, very, very simple, fruit-based stuff, and some very simple cakes that were delicious and fit well with what we were doing there. And I was just like using that. And that
That's a
was
great
like
book.
hugely, but is it my favorite book? I don't even have a copy of it. Right. I just don't. It's like, they're David Thompson's first book, Ahantai. That was hugely influential on me because of the foreword that I read, not because of the recipes. I don't use the recipes in his book. They're just too crazy, too arcane, too involved, and too like they don't actually work. David will kill me for saying this, but like they don't actually work. You have to be an excellent cook to make those recipes work.
Yeah.
But the way that he writes about the food was incredibly informative to me.
That's awesome. What is your like go-to tool? Or what do you recommend for people?
Oh, that's super easy. It's a mortar and pestle. And then the name of the restaurant, Pok Pok, is the sound of a pestle hitting a mortar. It's one of the most versatile kitchen tools you can have in any kind of kitchen. And a good stone, I use 3 different kinds. I use a stone with a stone pestle. I use a clay with a wood pestle, and I use wood with a wood pestle for various different things. But if you can get a stone pestle, and I know there's like these ceramic ones that you grind with more than pound, but if you get a good quality mortar and pestle that's made out of stone, you can use it for everything. You can make mayonnaise in it, you can make salsas in it, you can make curry pastes, you can make salads, you can make everything in it. It's indispensable in my opinion.
What makes you happy as a chef?
Not having restaurants anymore.
That's a fair one.
Not being a chef anymore. Because I always think of this kind of like the idea of the word chef, right? It means head, chief, right? It's
Yeah.
you. If you don't have a kitchen to be the chef of, then you're not a chef. In some weird way in my mind, the term home chef, I don't know what the fuck that means. But I'm being very hidebound about this. I know that term has changed and it's no longer sort of, kind of the way that we think of the word chef anymore. But to me, old school, like I don't have a kitchen, I don't have a restaurant, so I'm not a chef. And I've always thought of myself more as a cook than a chef. However, I go around calling all my friends chefs, whether they're chefs or not. Right, chef?
Yes, chef. So funny.
One of my
It's
first
true.
cooks, we had this guy who came to work at Pok Pok. This guy was hilarious. He had never worked hard. He was raised in an upper middle class family in Bangkok, and he came to America to study business, and he needed a job, but he wasn't like an outgoing dude. He couldn't do the waiter thing. So I hired him. His name was Chu. And Chu came to work with us, and he'd never done any kind of manual labor in his whole life. And I had this really funny Austrian guy who worked in the kitchen, and Chu was just like fucking hopeless. So we immediately started calling him Chef Chu, and we just thought it was hilarious. So to this day, he's Chef Chu.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee, 100%.
Espresso or drip?
Espresso. I like Americanos, but I'm between the two. Like I make an AeroPress every day. That's my main go-to at home. I do
Milk or no
AeroPress.
milk?
Milk, a little bit, yeah.
Pancakes, waffles?
Oh, dude. In my life, it'd be pancakes,
Oatmeal or yogurt?
yogurt.
Bacon, sausage?
Fuck, dude, don't make me make a decision about that.
Okay, chicken or duck?
Duck.
Beef or pork?
Pork,
Quail or squab?
quail,
Hot dog, hamburger?
hamburger.
Ketchup, mustard?
You're talking about two of the best sauces in the world. And fucking make another decision, huh? Mustard,
Whole grain or Dijon?
Dijon,
French fries, onion rings?
French fries,
Taco, burrito?
taco,
Pasta or noodles?
noodles,
Ravioli, dumplings?
dumplings,
Raw oysters, raw clams?
oysters,
Lobster or crab?
crab.
What type of crab?
I mean, Pacific Northwest, I grew up around it. Dungeness was kind of the thing that we always had that I really liked. Living in Southeast Asia, the blue swimmers are really nice. And then recently I did a dinner at Providence in LA with Michael Chimursti. It was fantastic. And they had box crabs, and those things were fucking insane, dude. I've never had those before. Those were amazing.
Those are good.
Mud
Sea urchin
crabs
or...
in Australia. There's so many good crabs.
I know, right? Crabs are great. It's such a unique, and they're all different, right? They all have a different texture, sweetness. It's just so great. Sea urchin or
Yeah.
caviar?
Sea urchin.
Truffles, black or white?
White.
Meatballs or sausage?
Sausage.
Favorite pizza style?
A modified New York style, I guess. I'll tell you what is not my favorite is Neapolitan.
Do you like dessert or cheese?
I like dessert. I got a sweet tooth.
Ice cream or soft serve? Gelato or sorbet?
Gelato. Yeah.
Cup
Ice
or a
cream.
cone?
Cup these days?
Do you prefer chocolate, as in like bittersweet or milk, or fruit?
Fruit.
Honey or maple syrup?
Maple syrup. I'm a Vermonter.
Red wine or white wine?
Cider.
My next was light beer or dark beer.
Light.
White spirits, dark spirits?
Well, again, if I had to go to my grave with only one, I'd have to choose between flavor and kind of how I feel in the morning. So for flavor, the dark spirits. For how I feel in the morning, the white spirits.
What's your favorite sparkling? Champagne, Prosecco, Cava, Lambrusco?
You know what? I like Cava, I think.
Do you have a favorite candy?
I've got many favorite candies. You know what? I found my favorite ever in a fucking CVS pharmacy in Hawaii at like midnight. It's the Haribo ginger lemon gummies.
Oh, I haven't seen those yet.
Amazing.
I'm going to find
Dude.
those on the next trip.
They're the best.
Do you have a guilty pleasure?
No, none of my pleasures are guilty.
What would be your last meal?
Well, we don't get to choose that, do we? Normally,
No, you don't, but now you can.
Now I can. Okay. Well, look, I mean, it's gonna be a northern Thai spread of lab and grilled meat and fresh herbs and vegetables and sticky rice.
That sounds great. Thanks so much, Andy. I really appreciate it. I'm officially speaking to you tomorrow in the morning. You're drinking coffee, and I'm like drinking wine. It's dinner time here, and it's tomorrow morning there. So if people want to see where you're doing your pop-ups and upcoming things, where are they going to find you on Instagram?
I'm at Pok Krua, PAWKHRUA, at Pok Krua. That's me on Instagram and Facebook. I don't fuck with TikTok. I'm just too old. I don't know how to deal with it.
It's okay. I don't either.
Instagram is my main thing, or at Pok Pok PDX. That's the other. And also at andyricker.com. andyricker.com is kind of where you go for my personal stuff.
Are you still doing tours?
I am. I just got back from one in Spain and America and a bit here. It's really kind of depends on a bunch of stuff. I'm still, I'm 62 years old. It gets harder to do physically, but mentally and the mechanics of it, I still can do it. I'm going to be in Australia in I think it's March for about a month doing a bunch of stuff there, including the Melbourne Food and Wine. So yeah, I still do them.
Well, again, Andy, thank you so much. Folks, if you have a chance and Andy's doing a pop-up, don't miss it. I miss his food very, very much. I miss hanging out, sitting, having noodles, eating wings, and just talking mad shit. I miss those days a lot.
Me too.
All right, folks, make sure you find out where he's going to be next. It is definitely worth the trip. I would say go to Australia if you can, because it's going to be a doozy.
All right. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you. Thanks for listening to How the Sausage is Made. If you've liked what you've heard today, please make sure to like and subscribe. And don't be afraid to tell your friends about it.